And I just heard the noon whistle here in Fort Atkinson. And even though my computer says it's only 11:58, it is time for me to say that this is Steve Larson up here at Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, coming from the offices at Hoyt's Dairyman. And welcome to all of you that are out there. We have an interesting kind of a team approach today to today's subject, and we're looking forward to it very much. We have a group from National Milk Producers Federation. We're going to be talking today about farmers assuring responsible management, the farm program, and they're going to be sharing an update on that important program for us. So again, welcome to all of you, and let me now turn things over to our co-host, Dr. Mike Hutchins down at the University of Illinois. Mike, good morning, and we'll let you introduce our speakers.
Well, very good, Steve. Thanks very much for the kind words. And you're right, it's kind of a triple header, as we'd say here today, and that's kind of appropriate since the Cubs are going to go to spring training, I think tomorrow with their pitchers and catchers. So we're pretty excited here with the Chicago Cubs, but we'll just kind of leave that alone for right now. But anyway, we want to certainly welcome our team of three here today. The first one of the three, and we're going to introduce all three of them very quickly. You'll see them on your screen right now. Emily Yeiser Stepp is basically the director of the Farm Animal Care Unit. Grew up outside Annapolis, Maryland. Got her bachelor's degree in animal sciences with a minor in agribusiness management from Penn State University. And then she went on and worked for ABS Global for a period of time. Went back, got her master's degree at Virginia Tech, and she's really excited because they beat Virginia last night in basketball, and got her master's degree in dairy science. And we're pleased to have her online as well. Another person is Ryan Bennett. He is the Senior Director, Industry and Environmental Affairs for National Milk Producers Federation. He manages their stewardship program, which includes greenhouse gas emissions and energy use on dairy farms. Ryan has a master's degree of agribusiness from Kansas State University. We had a big discussion about basketball there as well. And he also got his undergraduate degree there as well. Our third part of our triple header today is Dr. Jamie Jonker, Vice President, Sustainability and Science Affairs, National Milk Producers, and he works primarily in broad areas of sustainability and scientific affairs on animal health, animal biotechnology, dairy farm security, dairy farm water quality, and besides that, he serves on a number of different committees representing national milk producers, which are very numerous to read to here today. Jamie received his bachelor's and master's degree from Cornell University and his PhD from the University of Maryland as well. Prior to joining National Milk Producers, he had a stint of time with the National Academy of Science and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and also in the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Agriculture. So we welcome all three of you here, and I believe, Emily, you're going to kick it off here, so the program is yours, and away we go.
Great. Thank you, Mike. This morning, welcome everyone. Glad to have you with us today. We're going to start off here quickly with an evaluation, or a quick evaluation question. Have you ever had a farm animal care evaluation conducted on your farm? This is going to help us just to gauge what the experience level is, particularly with our farm animal care program, and then I'll launch into some of our slide deck.
Okay, well, we're off and running. Steve, have you guys been involved in the farm program out there?
At our farm through our co-op membership, and okay. So actually people, the producers that are with us could respond about their farm, and those that are work with a number of producers and consulting duties or whatever could sort of reflect what would be reflective of their clients and customers and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, the vote's pretty slow here, Steve. I don't know, maybe it's got all that warm weather that we're going to be getting this week here in the Midwest, or maybe it's that snowstorm that Jamie is caught up there in Boston with. But Jim, let's go ahead and close. We got 71% of the votes, and Emily, what do you think of the vote?
Well, it's maybe a little surprising on the no side, but certainly that's why we're here today, to just give you guys some more additional background on not only farm animal care, but the collective farm umbrella and programs that are within it. So I'll go ahead and continue on. So what we want to do is just give you a brief overview of what the Farmers Assuring Responsible Management Program is going to entail in 2017, and particularly in my arena that I'll review is the animal care piece. So just a little bit of background, what is FARM? So in 2009, the National Milk Producers Federation and Dairy Management, Inc. Saw what I would say, saw the writing on the wall in recognizing the concern and need for transparency within our food supply, and initiated the program now known as Farmers Assuring Responsible Management. So this program focused on animal care, started in 2009, so it's going on its 8th year in existence. And it really started with that animal care piece, and has since expanded, as was addressed earlier, but we'll go into each of the different program areas a little more in depth. But really the overall program goal was to assure our consumers and our customers that we're doing the right thing. We know as the industry, and we know as farmers, that we know that we take the right care of our animals because it's the right thing to do, but we needed an avenue to provide that data and proof points to our consumers and our customers to share that. It's no longer the culture of a handshake and a back flap to assure people that we're doing the right thing. So we needed those proof points, and that's really where the program goal took this to the next level. So what it looks like today is this is kind of what we call our farm or our farm umbrella, and it encompasses 3 silos. Animal care was obviously the initial silo, and then expanded into antibiotic stewardship and environmental stewardship, which Jamie and Ryan will speak on later. But animal care is right now the program that has the evaluation associated with it, that most are probably more familiar with, and then we also do have those 2 other silo areas. As we were introduced earlier, 3 of us as staff members there, Jamie, Ryan, and myself, all with a deep history and deep knowledge of the dairy industry. My family and I still maintain a small registered herd of Brown Swiss and Holsteins. And then Ryan actually has some more beef background, and Jamie was raised on a dairy farm. So not to leave our other 2 team members out, Emily Meredith was the director of the Farm Animal Care Program, and within the last year got a promotion to Chief of Staff, but she still oversees, I would call that entire umbrella, or the farm. And then probably the most important staff member I consider is Beverly Hampton, our farm program coordinator. She makes sure that all of our comings and goings with webinars like this, in addition to our communication and social media outreach, goes flawlessly, and also manages oversight with helping with our cooperatives and processors in the database system. So that's our full team, and we have obviously expertise areas in various areas, but if you call us, we are happy to have a conversation with you, and if it's not our area, we will punt to the appropriate person. So why does the farm program matter? Again, we all know that the dairy industry has a great story to tell, but we needed that additional proof points to back up those positive stories. We all hear about telling our story, and that's been what DMI has very much emphasized. And to accent those stories, we also needed the data to support them. The nice thing as well about the farm program, and we'll get into a slide a little bit later, but the farm program allows for one consistent, unified message to come from the industry. As we've maybe seen in some of our other barnyard species, there's a variety of different programs out there that you can assure your customers that you're doing the right thing. But the nice thing is with farm is that it is one unified message. We can all get behind that one program that we can say that we're all a part of, and be proud to share those stories through that way. This is the governance structure. Each of the different silos, as outlined here, as you can see, animal care, environmental stewardship, and the antibiotic stewardship silos, each have a similar governance structure, starting with what we call either a technical writing group or a task force that is comprised of farmers, academics, veterinarians, and cooperative staff. And that's really where specifically we kind of get down into the weeds of updating guidelines and best management practices in each of those respective silos. Once those recommendations and guidelines are considered, then that presentation goes to the Animal Health and Wellbeing Committee of National Milk Producers to approve, and then finally it's approved by the National Board of Directors for National Milk. And that's how each of these is structured. It may be called different things, but each of those silos kind of goes through the same process to create those BMPs and guidelines. So that was a brief overview. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the animal care section of this, and then turn it over to our other team members to go into their respective silo. So as of this past year, as of end of 2016, we had over 105 participating cooperatives and or proprietary processors participating in the farm animal care program. We do ask that all those cooperatives and proprietary processors sign up for the newest and latest version each time a new version of the farm animal care program comes out. And we that currently encompasses just over 98% of the domestic milk supply in 49 states. So if anybody wants to go to Hawaii to accompany anyone on a farm animal care evaluation out there, I'm sure there would be plenty of opportunity to do that. Recognizing that this program has been in place since 2009, we have had over 45,000 second-party evaluations completed to date. Now, understanding that we've got about 45,000 dairy farms in the country, that doesn't mean that each dairy farm has had one evaluation, because we've obviously had early adopters, early participants, kind of that middle group, and some of the more recently where we've gotten to that 98% of the domestic milk supply has come towards the end. Some will be having this year their first evaluation, and some may be having their third. So we'll get a little bit more into what the second-party evaluations look like, but it's a strong number. On an annual basis, we get about anywhere between 7,000 and 9,000 second-party evaluations completed. And those evaluations done are by more than 370 trained farm evaluators. So our farm evaluators are those individuals who, first and foremost, have some type of dairy background. So we require that all of our farm-trained evaluators have either a bachelor's degree in dairy science and 2 years or more of practical on-farm dairy experience. Or if they don't meet those requirements, that they have at least 8 years of practical on-farm dairy experience. So these individuals can be anyone from cooperative staff, cooperative processor staff, veterinarians, extension folks, and really anyone that meets those qualifications. And there are additional trainings. We have a 2-day training that they must go through that I'll hit on a little bit later. But so we're working with a huge group of people that are highly trained and skilled to conduct those evaluations on farms. So generally speaking, the farm animal care components are three-tiered. We like the number 3 within our program. The best management practices are the first tier. This is what the technical writing group works on. They help develop the animal care reference manual that provides those guidelines and best management practices that we encourage producers to follow. And then that gets implemented through the second-party evaluations. So the second-party evaluation contains each of those pieces with a pre-interview with the producer itself, interview questions, which in the newest version of the evaluation form, we have about 51 interview evaluation questions that are observed. Animal observations, so hygiene, locomotion, body condition, and hock and knee lesions are analyzed, in addition to the facilities and the environment of the farm. And then a closing interview, and then follow up in the form of action plans. So that's kind of where the actual heavy lift of where we use our evaluators to do the second-party evaluations. And then to make sure that we as the farm program and our evaluators are doing their job and to maintain the integrity of the program, we have a third-party verification process. So we work with an organization that comes out and does third-party verifications on farms. It's on a subset of the farms that are evaluated within the last calendar year to make sure that we're hitting our marks. You know, are we accomplishing the training? Are we maintaining the consistency within the program, recognizing that with over 370 evaluators, there is some room for interpretation, and so we want to make sure that we're staying as in line with the integrity of the program as possible. So next I'm going to go into the priority areas. As I mentioned, the best management practices and the animal care reference manual are updated once every 3 years by that technical writing group. And in this latest version, version 3.0, they've identified 3 what we're calling minimum participation requirements or phase 1 priority areas that we're expecting all dairies to comply with. And those 3 things are listed there on your screen. One is that the farm must have a valid veterinary client-patient relationship signed on an annual basis. And that form, we do have templates of all these forms that we're asking for, but that form can be one that your vet has on hand or that you've worked up with your vet that would check that box. Additionally, we are asking for each employee with animal care responsibilities to have, we kind of have a longer name there, Dairy Cattle Care Ethics and Training Form, but it's really a cow care agreement, so that they're agreeing that they will employ proper stockmanship mechanisms on the dairy, as well as not willfully mistreat or abuse animals. And then additionally that they have some type of documentation that they've been trained in their particular animal care area. So for example, if you have a calf feeder, that they've been trained on the volume of milk, the way the calves should be handled, identify any areas of sickness that calves, so that they understand what they're responsible for. So that training must also be logged. And that's really those kind of, it's one line but 2 pieces to that, so the cow care agreement in addition to training documentation. Just for future reference, we do kind of have the what is training in the eyes of farm on our website, and it can be anything from reading a Horde's Dairyman article on calf care and having that employee go out and demonstrate to their manager that they understand the best management practices that they want to see employed on the dairy, to the extensiveness of the Dairy Care 365 program. So there's a lot of room for interpretation there, but we just really want to emphasize that employee training piece. And then finally, the banning of tail docking, the ban started on January 1 of 2017, and so we'll have that phase-out period over the next 3 years. The technical writing group also identified what we're calling phase 2 priority areas. These are areas that we really want to focus on. They don't have the hard and fast consequences as our priority 1 areas do, which I'll get to here in a second. But these are just areas that the technical writing group felt needed to be emphasized, that within the herd health plan, you have protocols for newborn and milk-fed calves, pain management, non-ambulatory animal management, as well as euthanasia, and then that the animal observations, that lameness, body condition scores, and hock and knee lesion scores are meeting the benchmarks that are outlined in the animal care manual. For those of you who are familiar with the previous version, that animal observation list had an additional piece of it of hygiene. We are have a task force in place to look at revising that scoring system, so that's why that one came off. And primarily in the herd health plan, those 4 areas, if you're going to do no other protocols, those are the 4 we really want to have in place. We are asking for an additional 10 protocols in the full evaluation form, but those 4 are the highest priorities as identified by the technical writing group. So those are kind of the 2 phases. And within version 3.0, the first 2 versions of farm animal care really were, a survey to assess where we were. And what probably the greatest criticism that came from the program was, well, that's great, but are we actually helping the welfare of the animals if there's no follow-up or accountability with what we're asking for? And so that's been the biggest change that we've implemented within version 3. And here is just how the accountability measures work now in version 3. So a second party evaluation is done if you look all the way there to the left of your screen. If a no is answered to a priority 2 area, a continuous improvement plan is put in place. And those continuous improvement plans must be addressed before your next evaluation, so within the next 3 years. My best example has been if you don't meet the hock and knee lesion score, which is 95% of a 2 or less, then let's say you're meeting it at 87%, and by your next evaluation you're at 90%. While you're still not meeting the benchmark, you have shown improvement. So that's where the priority 2 areas fall. The priority 1 areas are the ones that have probably the stronger consequences, the stronger accountability related to them. So if no is answered to any of those 3 priority 1 areas, what is instituted is a mandatory corrective action plan. Once that mandatory corrective action plan is created, that must be resolved within a 12-month time frame or less. So your processor or your cooperative can set an earlier date of resolution for that, but it must be addressed within a 12-month period. In order for it to be resolved, there will be a follow-up evaluation to ensure that resolution has occurred. And if at that point, let's say that's at the 12-month point, it still hasn't been satisfactorily resolved, that will put that farm into a probationary period, which you still have 60 days to correct that area. And if that area is still not corrected within 60 days, that farm will be suspended from the program. What that then means is if a cooperative or processor continues to pick up milk from that farm, that entity will no longer be viewed as in good standing with the farm program, and their logo and listing on our public website will be removed, which will indicate to customers who they may market their milk to that farm or that entity, that co-op or processor, is no longer in good standing with the farm program. So that's the accountability measure, and as we go further into some of the other silo areas, I'm sure there will be additional questions. Encourage any questions around that later on. So just quickly, how to prepare for your farm evaluation. The primary areas of evaluation are these 6 areas, so management, SOPs, and records, newborn and milk-fed calves, nutrition, health, environment and facilities, handling, movement, and transportation. So if you go into the animal care reference manual, those are the primary areas of evaluation that are looked at, and in those 50 questions that are asked, those are the primary categories. Again, the evaluation entails that pre-evaluation, so your evaluator should provide you with a self-assessment form, which we also have available on the website, and a pre-evaluation checklist that asks for a farm layout and a map so that when the evaluator comes, he knows what the herd demographics look like, the interview questions, and then the animal and facility observations, and then a closing meeting and follow-up. And in that closing meeting and follow-up, that's where the farm is also provided with their copy of an evaluation form, and any of those either mandatory corrective action plans or continuous improvement plans are reviewed. So some of the areas or resources that we've created to help meet those evaluation areas, you can see that listing there. Obviously the reference manual, self-assessment tool, and a variety of different posters and sample protocols, fillable protocols, and training resources. As we note there, you can use the farm templates or you can use your own versions of all these documents, records, and trainings. Certainly we love when we see our logo, but that's not a necessity to check the box. So please feel free to explore our website, nationaldairyfarm.com, and those are all listed under resources. So finally, we don't like to ask things that we can't help you deliver on as producers. The farm training opportunities, we've partnered with Merck Animal Health and their Dairy Care 365 program to kind of bring our animal care reference manual to life and highlight each of these areas that are in webinar form that can then be used for training purposes. And we've also worked with our beef quality assurance partners on the beef side to create a stockmanship training video that will be available on the website within this week. And we kind of previewed it at World Dairy Expo this past year. Got a lot of very valuable attention, and we're pretty excited to get that out the door. So be on the lookout for that. We also have 1 or 2 more Merck webinars here in the upcoming weeks. So again, please visit our website to identify those additional training opportunities. Finally, this is what our website looks like, and that's where these resources can be found. And just as an example, as I noted earlier in the presentation, having one unified voice is critically important to this, because as you can imagine, if each of these, this is just a small subset of the endorsements that Farm Animal Care has had. If each of these entities, each of these customers had their own animal care program, there's a likelihood, with the way that we all know that milk moves, that each of these customers could be asking for a different set of standards for you to follow. So you could have not just one unified program or evaluation to go through, you could have 5 or 10. And so we feel that the Farm Animal Care program really helps everybody, not only on the producer, cooperative processor side, but also in the customer arena, really stand behind one program itself. And then finally, this is just some of the examples of those public endorsements of Farmers Assuring Responsible Management and the Animal Care program for some of the more major customers, you know, Chobani, Kroger, and Aldi, along with numerous others. If you explore some of their customer websites, you'll find a lot of those acronyms, the FRAM acronym, showing up in their animal care policies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and he's going to talk about our antibiotic stewardship arena.
Great, thank you, Emily. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the HORDS audience today on this webinar about our second silo within the farm program, and that's antibiotic stewardship. If we could move on to the next slide. Before we get into antibiotic stewardship, I just wanted to give a very brief background on the difference between residues and resistance. And that's because there's confusion amongst our consumers about the differences. Resistance, which can occur naturally and has been occurring naturally in bacteria for thousands of years, is when they become resistant to the effects of an antibiotic to kill the bacteria. Residues, on the other hand, are merely when we have a remnant of the antibiotic left in the meat or milk that is above the level defined by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for what they deem as a safe level. Moving on to the next slide, our antibiotic residue avoidance manual, which we publish annually, has a variety of best practices that help promote judicious and responsible use of antibiotics on the dairy farm. The first is that veterinarian client-patient relationship, aligning very well with the animal care program. The second is working with veterinarian guidance on prescription and FDA-approved over-the-counter drug use on farms. The third is administering all drugs and properly identifying treated animals. Following that is making sure that you have the proper treatment records on all treated animals, including the antibiotic used, the volume, the route of administration, the length of treatment, and the information to provide you with knowing how long to avoid marketing that milk or meat from that animal. The next is training to avoid adulterated milk or meat products. Drug residue screening, in case you are unsure, keep it out. And then finally, marketing only healthy cattle. On the next slide is our veterinary client-patient relationship. Again, the cornerstone of our animal care program is also really the cornerstone of antibiotic stewardship on the dairy farm. And that veterinarian client-patient relationship is an integral part of proper drug use on cattle operations. That comes from a statement from the American Association of Bovine Practitioners, which is our dairy cattle veterinarians. On the next slide, we have the herd health plan. And the animal care program states that an effective written herd health plan emphasizes prevention, rapid diagnosis, and quick decision-making on necessary treatment of all sick or injured dairy cattle on the farm. As we know, we do our best to make sure that animals do not become sick or injured, but they do become sick or injured, can become sick or injured. And in that case, an effective herd health plan includes protocols for making treatment decisions based upon common illnesses on the dairy farm. On to the next slide, we have what is coming in 2017 from our farm antibiotic stewardship resources. First, we will have our annual update to our milk and dairy beef residue avoidance manual that will be available here in the next few weeks. New to 2017, we are working on an antibiotic pocket guide, something that would be available for keeping in your pocket as you are moving around the farm. And then finally, late in 2017, we are hoping to have a mobile app that would be available for producers and farm managers. Moving on to the next section, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the successes that we've had in our antibiotic residue testing. As many of you may recall, we've actually had a milk and dairy beef residue avoidance manual for nearly 30 years. Originally, it was produced by the Dairy Quality Assurance Center out of Iowa. In 2009, National Milk actually purchased the DQA Center and all of its materials, and in 2010, we published our first milk and dairy beef residue avoidance manual. On the next slide, I want to remind you about the residue testing that occurs in all U.S. milk. And this is, according to the Grade A Pasteurized Milk Ordinance, all bulk milk pickup tankers must be screened for beta-lactam residues. The FDA commissioner can also determine if there is additional residue testing to be required. And, as we all know, all milk with a residue is disposed of and does not enter the commercial milk supply. On the next slide, we can see the great work that has happened over the past 20 years in bulk milk tanker residues. We've gone from a very low number of 0.104% and declined that by nearly 90% to 0.012%. And that is about 1 out of every 8,300 tankers. It's an excellent job. It's been an excellent part of our story, and it really is a testament to the antibiotic stewardship that dairy farmers do day in and day out on their judicious and responsible usage. On our next slide, I want to talk a little bit about residue testing that also occurs in our pasteurized product. The PMO also requires that retail samples prior to being distributed from the processor are also tested for antibiotics. And in the past 5 years, not a single sample in over 200,000 retail samples that have been tested have found an antibiotic residue. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about residue testing in our market cull cows. Our market cull cows are subject to residue testing from the USDA Food Safety Inspection Service. They have two types of testing that they do. They have scheduled sampling, which is a random sampling from all animals that have, and then there's targeted sampling, which is risk-based from the veterinarian inspectors, that is a sampling of animals that they suspect have violative residues. Of course, as with milk, all meat that has a residue is disposed of and does not enter the commercial milk supply. On the next slide, we can see that we're having generally a good trend in our cull cow tissue residue violations. That top line is the total number of tissue residue violations by quarter over the past 2.5 years for what has been reported by USDA, and generally a decreasing trend. The other ones that you see there are individual drugs. You can see that the top 5 drugs that are listed there account for about 80% of the tissue residue violations in our cull cows. This represents about 1 out of every 6,000 dairy cull cows that are sent to slaughter. So we send around 3.2 million dairy cows to slaughter each year, and about 1 in 6,000 of those ends up having a tissue residue violation. As with the milk side, that's a pretty good story, but I think what we strive to do within the farm program itself is continuous improvement. So we can take what is a very small number and continue to make it an even smaller number. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Bennett. I'm Senior Director of Industry and Environmental Affairs here at National Milk Producers Federation, and I oversee our environmental stewardship module, which actually launched this morning. It is the third pillar to the farm program, and it comes to us initially as the Farm Smart program, which was initially developed by the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. That program is essentially a greenhouse gas and energy footprinting model where you can input normally less than 48 different inputs into the application that we've developed that's available in the App Store for co-op field staff or farmers to use. And through that process, you input less than 48 different things, and you get your carbon footprint, your pound of carbon produced per pound of milk on the dairy farm. And you also get the same for the amount of energy you're using per pound of milk. And really, what makes this unique is the fact that we're really using a tool that measures environmental improvement, but it's also highly correlated to your production efficiency, which obviously farmers are getting better at and more efficient at producing milk all the time. Cows are producing more milk more efficiently, less feed waste, more efficient motors, more energy efficient light bulbs, better utilization of our manure management practices, so on and so forth. So this is something that we know is already going on, and it's a positive story that maybe you've seen told in different ways already. The most famous of which is the Jude Capper study, which found that a carbon footprint of a gallon of milk has decreased by 63% since 1944. Obviously, we're still getting more efficient at producing milk, and that trend continues. We might not see that 63% over the next 60 or 70 years. But that trend will continue to go the same direction as we get better at producing milk. And it just so happens that at the same time that this is happening, and this is a positive story that we can relay to consumers, we're also getting asked about this quite a bit from different customers and their consumers. So different brands and retailers are asking about this as well. It really came to us by way of a lot of the same people who are very active in our farm animal care program at the cooperative or company level, using that program and implementing it, have also been at the table at the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy in developing the Farm Smart tool, which is now has come into and has become Farm Environmental Stewardship. And really, they were looking for a way to add approximately an hour on to the end of an animal care evaluation and be able to go ahead and use Farm Smart. So that's basically what Farm Environmental Stewardship is at this point. So as I mentioned, we've been going through a process on this, and it came to us here about summer of 2016. We've, as you saw the governance slide earlier from Emily, the task force committee met and really gave me some guidance on how they want me to proceed, what types of materials are needed for both the farmers, the evaluators, co-op and company field staff, so on and so forth. And I've been able to take that direction and move forward. We do have a user guide, a sample assessment, and a getting ready document on the website at nationaldairyfarm.com under the environmental stewardship section. We'll also be we're in the process of creating a project guide, which will really look at everything from how to produce more milk to how to save money on your electricity bill. And that we plan to launch about mid-April. And we've been working with a bunch of different experts from different sectors within dairy to make sure that we get that right. And it will really be a neat tool that will both be able to lower your footprint in the model itself, while at the same time possibly saving you some money or maybe even making you some more money. So really a lot of different things from manure management to different animal science practices that you want to make sure that you're employing on your dairy farm if you can, or how you might be able to get an energy efficiency audit and be able to improve your electricity bills. So Lots of things coming out on this. We have done a couple webinars, both an introduction to the program and then a walkthrough with our evaluators in order to show them how to use the tool. And like I said, it went live today. Now, this program is much different than how we see the animal care program. For one, animal care requires an evaluation once every 3 years. We don't see the need to do that, but since we know that folks are going to be evaluated once every 3 years in the animal care program, we've developed a sampling protocol which will randomly select 10% of a company or co-op's farms if they want to participate in the program. So once again, we're not requiring participation in the program. If you're a farm animal care participant, it's a separate silo. And if you do want to participate in the program, though, we're recommending that you use the random sampling protocol, which would randomly sample 10% of the farms to be done over the course of 3 years. So not 10% per year, 10% over the course of 3 years. And that random sampling protocol would use things that a co-op or company receiving milk from a farm would already have at their disposal. Those two things being annual milk production and the zip code of the farm. So it sorts based on geographic region and then the size of that operation. Similar to what Emily talked about in terms of getting prepared for an animal care evaluation, there's some work that you want to do on the front end before you do an environmental stewardship assessment. Things like obtaining their milk production records, either DHIA records or their milk checks would be a good example to know how much milk they produced and what their components were within those milk as we calculate, as you'll see later, a fat and protein corrected milk, which normalizes milk whether it comes from a farm with all Jersey cows or all Holsteins. We can normalize that through an equation. You would want to find any records that they have on the number of cows they have, both dry and lactating, heifers, and calves that they have on that farm. Things like their energy bills, their fuel logs, or their fuel bills, and those kinds of things are also super helpful to have in one place before you get to the farm. As I mentioned before, production is a big part of this. Basically what this spits out on the other end after you get done with the inputs is a fraction, which on the top side would have your pounds of milk that you produce each year. So as I mentioned before, you put in your annual milk production, your protein and fat content, and that gets normalized as a fat and protein corrected milk equation. And I also mentioned the herd size, the number of cows you have, both dry and lactating, and then heifers and calves as well will impact the model. The energy section, as I mentioned before, we're only looking at what you're producing on the farm. So we do have a crop section of this that asks a percentage of crop that is produced on farm, and that actually already includes your diesel, and any electricity or gas used to produce those crops. So in this section, we're really just looking for electricity and diesel use on farm. Feed, I mentioned before that we're always getting better at nutrition, and what you would want to put in here is an average ration, and we've got in our user guide available on our website how you would come up with an average ration. But really we're looking for that dry matter intake, which is what most farmers have as a percentage for each part of their ration, and you would input that into the model, and it would spit out what you need. I mentioned before the crop section. I don't have that in here, but the crop section essentially just asks the percentage of different crops that are produced on farm. So corn, for example, the percentage of corn used for feed of your dairy cows produced on farm. The last section would be manure management. This section you would put in however many different types of manure management you have, and then be able to, you would be able to break those up on percentage either through looking at a farmer's nutrient management plan or just using your head. Simple common sense. For example, if you have a different manure management system in your parlor than what you have in your barn, think about the number of hours your cows are spending in that parlor using that different manure management system as compared to the barn. Same thing goes back to that fuel and electricity use. I mentioned before that we're trying to exclude the other parts of our operation like feed production. So you might think about how much fuel or energy you were using in months prior or post to planting and harvest to be able to figure out kind of a good baseline of what to use in those couple of months where you might have a little bit higher fuel costs. And then at the end, as I mentioned, it spits out your pound of CO2 per pound of fat and protein corrected milk, and that is both compared to a regional average of a farm of similar size and compared to the national average of farms of similar size across all these different areas: feed production, on-site enteric emissions, or just emissions produced through the digestive process of the cow, fuel use and manure use, and then you have your total there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over.
So, just as a reminder to everyone, there are multiple ways that you can connect with us at the farm program, particularly with our social media channels. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. The Twitter and Instagram are at Farm Program, and then our Facebook page is National Dairy Farm Program. So please look us up if you want to further promote and amplify the good that is being done on your particular dairy farms or within the industry. We encourage you to tag not only the farm program, but also use the hashtag FarmProud, F-A-R-M in capital letters, and then proud starting with a capital P. Additionally, if you want to reach out to us after this webinar and have additional questions, comments, thoughts, we'd be happy to have you do that either via our general farm email address, dairyfarm@nmpf.org, or by calling the National Milk offices at the number found on our website. So please feel free to connect with us and amplify our collective good dairy story. So to round out the last little bit of the webinar here today, we've got one more poll question. How confident are you about the role of the farm program in bridging the farmer-customer-consumer relationship? And we've got 4 options there: more confident, confident, less confident, or unsure.
Okay.
Well, the polls are open, Steve.
We'll see
I know which way.
how the voting goes here. I'm sure that people will find more confidence, but some may be very confident. We'll see what they say. It certainly is good to know that there's going to be a common voice, a common source to verify our milk supplies, and I'm sure that that's has many positive aspects to it, from both from processors, retailers, and consumers. So, what do you think, Mike? How's the voting going?
Well, I think probably some of our listeners didn't realize that phone call was President Trump calling in. He had a comment.
I see. Well, he usually tweets, though. Doesn't he usually tweet? So maybe it was
so important he decided to call us and give us a ring. So if you're wondering. Anyway,
60% voted.
Yeah, we're going to close this off, right? And see what we have here.
Let's see what we come up with here.
Emily, what do you think of the response?
Well, I think it seems like maybe we did an okay job of conveying our message with the confident and more confident, and those who are unsure or less confident, we'd, as I mentioned, encourage you all to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to have a further conversation about why you're unsure or less confident. So with that, I'm going to give you our direct contact information. So not only can you reach us by the general farm inbox at dairyfarm@nationalmilk or nmpf.org, or you can see there my email, Ryan's, as well as Jamie's. So we just appreciate everyone being here on the call today. encourage any of you who do have questions to reach out to us. We are always open to having a dialogue and just listening to what's going on out there within the industry. So with that, I'll thank you, and I think we'll turn it back over to Dr. Hutchins to talk about the upcoming webinars.
Yeah, we'll turn it over to Steve. Steve.
Okay, very good. Emily, Jamie, and Ryan, thank you very much. Great job today. Very well done. A few technical surprises there, and we handled them all very well. So that's great. A very nice presentation, and we had a nice audience out there joining us today. Let me make a few announcements here while you all catch your breaths, and Mike maybe begins to organize some questions that might come up. All of those of you that were with us today will be receiving a short email survey here in the next couple of days, and as always, we appreciate your response. It doesn't take more than just a few seconds to respond to those questions, and we appreciate your input. Also, some of you may have noticed that when you receive reminders of future webinars, that there now is the opportunity to ask a question ahead of time. If you have something, an issue or specific question that relates to the topic we're going to be discussing in our next webinars, which we'll mention here in just a minute, you can do that. Just one plug that Hort's Dairyman Cow Judging Contest is going on now. The deadline is March 23rd, and actually you can judge the cows and submit your entry online if you want to by going to judging.hords.com. And I encourage people to do that. We don't print the names of the losers. We only print the names of the winners, so don't be bashful about submitting your placings if you're so inclined. And looking ahead at our next webinars, Dr. David Reed, a colorful speaker, many of you know of him. We'll be talking about all that parlor data that we generate in our new milking centers these days and how to make use of that, sort it all out. And then looking a little bit further ahead, on April 10th, Nigel Cook, well-known veterinarian here at the UW-Madison School of Veterinary Medicine, will be talking about all the ventilation options that we have for our new freestall barns, and there are a lot of them out there, and there's a lot of questions about how we should go. So we'll be looking forward to both of those presentations, and we hope that all of you can join us as well. And just another note that the webinar that we heard today and all of our previous webinars are available through our webinar archives at hords.com. You can just go to the webinar section of our homepage and go back and re-listen and share with other coworkers and others that you might want to do that. So we recommend that you consider that as well. Having said that, Mike, are there some questions out there?
Yes, there certainly are. So here we go. Emily, perhaps one for you right away, and that is, do you monitor, is everyone signing up and being part of the farm, or do you see other companies diverging and developing their own set? We saw the impressive list you had there. Any thoughts on that?
So we've had an excellent endorsement level with our customers, and through our partnership with the Innovation Center and DMI, as well as collectively with our work with Emily Meredith as our boss, they work very well together to do the outreach to our customers to make sure that the awareness is continually heightened and knowledge about the program is out there. So we anticipate only continued uptake and endorsement of the farm program from that standpoint with those key people. As you saw, the Costco's of the world, the Walmarts of the world, the Starbucks of the world certainly set a high level of precedence for people to follow. So we certainly expect only things to progress more towards the farm program as opposed to creating their own. The framework is already there, so as we can all recognize, if the framework's already there, it's easier to pick up something that's already working than recreating the wheel.
Ryan, perhaps a question for you, and that is on allocating some of the energetic costs for feed. What happens for farms that will actually be raising and selling feedstuffs, corn, soy, maybe even alfalfa off the farm? Will your program be able to handle that versus running all the crops through the livestock?
Yes, yeah. So basically the same way that I talked about the fuel use being fuel use on farm, and that there was assumptions built into the crop section, there's assumptions built into the crop section for bought feed as well, and that corresponding to your carbon footprint. As we go forward, I know the feed industry and the the crop producing organizations and the grain handling industry has really kind of come together around Field to Market, which would be a sister program to Farm Environmental Stewardship. And as they continue to go through their process and work more, there may be an opportunity to work more with them to integrate in the area of feed and crop production. But right now, there's just assumptions based on a national aggregate level of what that bought feed would encompass inside of the model on greenhouse gases.
Very good. Jamie, a question for you, and that has to do with organic milk, claiming, of course, no antibiotic residue. Does our consumers then get confused a bit since your data says there isn't any in the milk supply anyway? And any comments on those comparisons?
I think certainly there is some confusion within the consumer marketplace about the various label claims that are on a variety of dairy products, whether it's organic or conventional. Really what we're trying to do with the antibiotic stewardship silo of our farm program is to make sure that we continue this great story on the judicious and responsible use to maintain the health and well-being of our animals. The last thing that we want to do is go down the route of some of the other livestock sectors where they are losing the ability to use antibiotics to treat disease when that happens. And so we've got a great story there. And while there is some differentiation and maybe some confusion at times in the marketplace, our overall goal here is to take that great story that we've got on antibiotic stewardship and use that to continue to allow dairy producers the opportunity to use antibiotics when they need to treat disease, control disease, or prevent disease in their animals.
A follow-up question for you, Jamie, and it is we are signed up to a maximum antibiotic usage per animal based on milligrams per kilogram of body weight here in the UK. Is that going to happen, or is it happening here in the US? In other words, relating the maximum amount of antibiotics based on the size of the animal.
So we are getting questions from our customers about antibiotic use on our dairy animals. And I've seen one that has asked for what they call an average daily dose of antibiotics to our cows. And so there certainly is perhaps an interest in something like that. Given that we collect milk on a daily basis, any treatment with an antibiotic that causes a residue, of course, means you cannot sell that milk. And so, of course, producers are not using antibiotics on their animals just to increase their profitability, because in fact they would no longer have a saleable product. But I think where we're getting at is looking at ways about how we can educate our customers first, and then our consumers about how, when, and why we use antibiotics on the dairy farm. And as we help our customers understand that story, they help consumers understand the story. And certainly our dairy farmers that have become very active in social media have done an excellent job of talking about how and why they use antibiotics and the importance of using them, and the importance of using them judiciously.
Okay, here we go, Emily. Are you all set? Who decides what is an important animal welfare issue? Tail docking seems to have a lot of importance to a group soliciting improvement in animal welfare, but it doesn't seem very important to the cow. pet dogs get ears and tails cut. We feel the discussion should have a majority of producers deciding what is needed. Comments?
Sure. So related to the tail docking situation, as Jamie can provide a little bit more historical background, but this was not a change in policy in the farm animal care program. The policy was always an encouragement of removing or banning tail docking by 2022. What the change was that we accelerated the timeline by 5 years based upon our other industry stakeholders, particularly our vets with the American Association of Bovine Practitioners, our AVMA, our National Veterinary Medical Association, in addition to our milk quality specialists, the National Mastitis Council. All three of those entities came out with public policies against routine tail docking. Additionally, routine tail docking in small animals and pets has also been a policy created and followed up and approved by AVMA, so that is not inconsistent with the policy that they have provided for our dairy cows. We did not have the science to defend us on the tail docking policy, and hence there was really no leg to stand on in that policy being passed. When those three entities came out with it, they are customers and frankly within the industry were questioning why we couldn't do it earlier. And so that was the decision for the accelerated timeline and why we hopefully can move on, certainly adapting some of our management strategies, but hopefully we can start to focus on bigger welfare concerns in the future that do not inhibit any type of management style that our producers would feel. So Jamie, do you want to provide any additional background on that?
Yeah, Emily, I'll just add that it comes down to the lack of science to be able to support the use of the practice. It didn't make the quality of the milk better, didn't make the animals cleaner, and didn't really affect worker safety. And, you know, when we don't have the science to back up a practice, it makes it very difficult to defend it with our customers, particularly as we've designed the animal care program within farm to be science-based. We've always had, since the beginning of the program in version 1 in 2009, we recommended against routine tail docking and recommended switch trimming as the appropriate alternative, and then from there set forth a timeline for industry phase-out. And in version 3, the National Milk Producers Federation Board felt that there were a number of customers that were starting to have their own dates out there, and we needed to have the entire industry at the same level playing field. And so that's where we are today with the phase out that happened on January 1st of this year.
And I think there's
go ahead. I'll just add, you know, as you all as producers work to adapt to this change in management style, please reach out to us and tell us the successes and the challenges that you're experiencing. Likely you are not alone in this transition, and so we want to provide whatever resources and tools that we can to make this transition as relatively invasive as possible, and so we can only do that with, you know, the real life stories of how you guys have adapted and changed. So please feel free to reach out to us as you work through this transition.
We'll take one more quick question here, and I think maybe Jamie will be yours. Is there an interest from farm in avoiding antibiotic use through better on-farm testing for mastitis? This may be able to quickly determine if an individual mastitis infection would respond to antibiotics. Any thoughts on that?
You know, I think that that goes back to the idea of having that herd health plan that includes protocols for the detection and treatment of common diseases, and this would include your mastitis and mastitis-causing organisms. So I think working with a veterinarian to come together with how best to analyze mastitis when you have an animal that does have mastitis, and what is the best course of treatment based upon the organism is very important. And I think that is something that can can be embraced by the entire producer community, particularly because if you are using an antibiotic that is ineffective against the organism that's causing the mastitis, not only are you have the cost of that mastitis treatment, you also have the lost milk that you cannot sell. And so choosing the wrong antibiotic is essentially flushing money down the drain. And I know that farmers are always very good at making sure that they're not wasting money while assuring that they maintain the health and well-being of their animals.
My apologies, this one just snuck in. Do organic versus conventional farms have different standards under the farm program? Does organic versus a conventional milk supply have different farm standards under this program?
So actually, within our animal care program, and Emily might chime in a little bit after this, they are exactly the same standards. We have co-ops and processors that have organic dairy farms within their membership and milk supply that are in the program, and the requirements are the same. So, for example, they would need to have a herd health plan that would include protocols for identification, diagnosis, and treatment for disease. Now, of course, the National Organic Program itself has certain restrictions on what can and cannot be used for keeping the animal organic, and that is something that the individual organic farmer would need to do with their veterinarian. But the programs in animal care are requirements are exactly the same. No tail docking in organic, no tail docking in conventional. You need to have that BCPR, so on and so forth.
Well, listen, there's some other questions, but I think we're getting a little past our quitting time here. So, Steve, I'll turn it back to you to wrap her up.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And again, thank you, Emily Yeiser Stepp, Jamie Jonker, and Ryan Bennett with National Milk Producers Federation and the Farm Program. We appreciate your participation, and you did an excellent job. We had a nice group of listeners out there with us. And just one closing comment from me. We've been through the initial step here at the Horse Dairyman Farm. It's not as ominous as some people might envision it. We found out that we were doing, I think with a lot of people, we'll find out that they're doing things the right way, but they maybe just haven't quite written them down. We don't have maybe that vet relationship on paper, but it's there, and so it's a very doable program, and everybody wants to know how well they're doing, and I think a lot of people will find out that they're doing better than they thought they were. So it's not something to be too concerned about from that standpoint. And looking ahead again, all that parlor data, Dr. Dave Reed, March 13th, April 10th, Nigel Cook, ventilation in those big new freestall barns. So we hope we can have many of you with us. And again, our thanks to the crew from National Milk. And that's Steve Larson up here in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, signing up for this month.